Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. A new format here, straight from the laptop. But we're going to dive in about 20 seconds with our man, Ari Lewis, the guest for this episode. He is a writer and someone who condenses the internet by bringing information to you in a curated fashion, has made many newsletters, worked for many companies as an editor and a writer. So, with that being said, we dive into the skill that it takes to do such a thing, his journey, and much, much more. Enjoy. Thank you for being here. And I'll see you soon.
I have a dream.
It's one small step for man.
I am the greatest.
You want something, go get it. Period.
I know you mentioned you are in New York now, just moved out of Ohio, but I do appreciate you. You're actually a little bit closer to me geographically, but I appreciate you taking the time to dive deep as we get into many things today.
Yeah, Anthony, thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here. Obviously, we interact on Twitter a bunch, so excited to do the podcast with you.
Yeah, so what was the reason for moving? And we'll just get into it there and reverse backwards into more of your story and upbringing and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm from New York. I went to school in Cleveland at Case Western. Ended up living in Cleveland and recently decided to move away. Cleveland, just ended up running its course for me. Living at home right now until I moved to LA, sort of with the pandemic. My friends have told me to wait until things get a bit better in LA before I move. So waiting that out, and then we'll officially move to LA probably when this pandemic ends, which hopefully will be in the next few months.
Yeah. And then what's the reason for LA? You just want to be near creators, near other people, or what's the intention for that?
I have most of my friends there. Warm weather, nothing like too detailed of an answer.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. I just had a family member in Ohio recently, and I saw you were focused on Ohio X, which was like expanding the reputation and like awareness of Cleveland, Ohio itself. But I was gonna ask you, what was your background with finance and investing? Because I know you have certifications with that, and you made your own investment fund with Grasshopper Capital. But like, how did that hop from there to then focusing on creators and branding and attention economy, and like how do they complement each other? Because I find it like an interesting journey from one to the other.
Yeah, sure. So ended up getting into crypto when I was in high school. Long story short is my partner and I made money to seed our own fund. And from there, we ended up raising money around that. There was no like, we know what we're doing or really like any aha moment. We just did it, and that was sort of how we got into it. In terms of, sorry, what was that?
It was right out of college that you guys created that, and you did somewhat well before selling it to another firm, which is
it was sort of crypto was new. You didn't need to be experienced in traditional investing to start a crypto fund. I think the skill sets were sort of different. Because crypto is new, anyone could start one. So age wasn't a limiting factor in that. In terms of then going into Brand Street, one of the things I learned from doing crypto and sort of the connection was the importance of branding yourself. And especially a lot of people in crypto did a really good job on social media and just building out an audience for themselves. And I sort of began to realize the power of, if you own your audience, all the benefits that will come from it.
I see. And then what was the sort of door hinge for opening the door into writing for you? Because I know you've been focusing on that a ton, and then you just launched your Mastering the Attention Economy podcast, but I know writing was big for you. You even wrote for some publications when you were in Cleveland and I believe elsewhere, but like why was that the first approach for you, and why such a big focus on Twitter as you got into branding and started Brand Street just this past year?
Yeah, so I think writing a newsletter in particular is such a important tool to helping gather an audience and build it up. When you write in long form, it's like a differentiation. So much of what we see in the newsletter community is curated content, and not as many people are writing long form content. So I always think long form content is a good way to like differentiate yourself from the pack out there. But in terms of why I did that, again, I think it just goes back towards owning your audience. For me, a newsletter is like the best way to do that, capturing email lists and having an audience that I can speak to each week, week in and week out, knowing that they'll listen to me and open my email.
And I know the first 100 of anything is always the hardest. I know Anthony Pompanello, his wife, I believe she just posted something on Twitter talking about the first 50 with garnering any community. And then I know Kevin Kelly, I think he was the Wired editor, talked about the first 1,000, first 1,000, and then Andrew Horowitz of A16.7 like reduced it. He was like, no, first 100 is crucial to building anything, like just focus on that. So for you, with building the newsletter audience, what was the first 50 to 100 like, and how did you kind of trudge through that and focus on the depth with those individuals?
Yeah, so when I started the newsletter, I meant for me, I had a small following at that point. So I started doing like these live streamed webinars and capturing emails through them. So if you go back to like some of the earlier content I would do these YouTube videos where I'd interview a guest and live stream it, and I'd capture those email addresses and I would use them to start my email newsletter. So I think I had like 60 emails after the first couple weeks of doing that. And then I just started with those emails and grew it from there. So that was pretty much how I did that and grew it.
Gotcha. That's the live streaming, I feel as though the best case studies on growing an audience, they all started that. I know Barstool is he started doing live streams like early on when he founded Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy. But what's a really good example for you that you enjoy looking at in terms of a brand that's capturing attention without really paying for it? I know there's countless examples of it. You always post Twitter threads about great stories, great founders, and you interview amazing entrepreneurs and creators. But for you, what's one of your favorite examples of like a case study of that?
Yeah, so obviously I talk about Dave Portnoy a lot in Barstool. I think they do a really good job of it. It really depends on what we're talking about. Buffer in their early days did a really good job of like SEO content. They built out a huge content machine, posting an article every day on social media or about social media, and that really helped them grow their audience. So I think that's a good case study in building own content. But I think there are other companies that have done a good job of building a like community of sorts, right? Like Peloton. You might not think of them in like the sense of, right, because they're still paying for customer acquisition, but they've built such a strong brand through like this community and using that as a source of referrals. So I think they're in that boat. But I really think I look at it as like companies that create community as a moat. So if you're able to create community as a moat, you can succeed in growing your audience and creating an audience that is loyal to you and not commoditized. So what I talk about a lot and really need people to think about is you don't want to be that company that's like an Amazon product that's just putting out paid ads and trying to get people to convert on that, because there's no loyalty to that product. You know, one ad only equals like one sale. Like those customers don't necessarily scale. And I always think it's important to have multiple channels of acquisition, and like paid acquisition is a really important channel. But I think you need to figure out ways to make all the channels work together in tandem and not just be overly focused on one and not realizing how it affects the other channels and connects with all of them.
Yeah, and by other channels you mean like marketing and then sales and then like your website development and how they all go together, and like how you get a person from point A to point B to where you want them to go?
No. I mean, like, right, in like marketing, you have 3 channels. It's like earned, owned, and paid. So, I mean,
Gotcha.
How those interact with each other. Right. So if you have like, you're paying for Google ads, then you're paying for like, or I shouldn't say paying, but well, you could be paying for it, but then you have like SEO content, and then you have like, you know, your PR and whatnot. How do those all come together? And then on top of that, yeah, you can, I guess, talk about also how does it like integrate with like product development? You know, are the outward facingness of your brand, you know, affecting the next stages of your product, right? Because like you think about the way Peloton is as a company, right? It's very, from a brand point of view, I think of them as very forward thinking, but also like an entertainment company. So if you're on the product side and you're actually building the product, you need to think about the roadmap from that as well, of like, well, what are product features that tie into this vision that we're building, opposed to like building features that don't tie into that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And then for you especially, and I know a lot of people on Twitter, they're at a point where they're growing their audience so much that they're getting into making courses and like making paid things. I know with Branch Street, you have, it's subscription based, so people can pay monthly or yearly, but like how do you go from creating so much free value to then going down to offering something paid because there's a lot more value behind it and you want to create a larger community? I know there's so many great examples, but for you, like, what was the experience in going through that, and maybe some advice for those in the waters right now within that?
Yeah, I always say go paid as soon as possible. If you're going to go the paid route, it's just people get used to you being free, and then they don't want to pay for you. But I also think it's important to offer the additional stuff that's differentiated from your content you're doing on the free side. So, right, if you're on the free side, then, and you offer like an article once a week, you know, well, that means I think if you're doing paid, you need to be twice a week, and that other article's paid or something like that. I also think it's really important that paid content is for the most part tactical, in that you're actually teaching or doing something that is a takeaway for them in their work. I know there are exceptions, but for the most part, I think like those are the best paid content. And yeah, I think for those who are looking to go paid, it's so much about just like finding ways to add value to your audience, and finding niches that like no one's in, right? People are willing to pay if you're building for a niche that just no one's in, because that means they don't really have many options when it comes to content.
Well, that's a really good point. So you're like working to the market's advantage and not trying to work too hard. I think niche is big, because I hear a lot of people and I see a lot of people tweet about one thing they would give advice to their younger selves on to be focused early on. But for you, I want to ask, because you've worked with so many people and you've studied so many of them, and you wrote, like I said, Twitter threads on them. And at one point at Greenblock, I saw you worked with companies like Google and some bigger names. So what was the process you went through in trying to revitalize or grow their brand and increase their capturing of attention to their users or their community in doing so?
Yeah, so for a lot of the companies we worked with, it was very much tactical work. We didn't do a lot of like strategic work. It's sort of like why we wanted to move away from agency work. I think a lot of people will tell you that agency work is like super strategic, and the reality is it's not. Yeah, it's very much like you're helping the client implement what they want, and we sort of moved recently to more like doing more strategic engagements, and we're doing less and less consulting. We still do it, but we're really focused on doing consulting engagements where we're more strategic and helping them plan and do strategy than we are doing the tactical stuff. But yeah, a lot of our work on the consulting side now that's more strategy driven is helping customers and clients with the thoughts around. So we do a lot of like PR and their PR strategy. So thinking about how do you get on TV or how do you get in like local media or industry publications, and then also their own content strategy. So, okay, I'm building a newsletter. Like, what does it look like? What's the point of it? Where do you want to go with it? So that's another thing that we help with. Again, I think for me now, a lot of the focus is more on Brand Street and just building that up. It's so hard to do agency work, in my opinion, and like really be impactful from a strategy level because it just takes so long to get bought into larger companies. It's why they have employees that are there for years, and you have to change all these people's minds and get them to change strategy. It's just really difficult. So I think a lot of agencies are really more on the tactical side and are really helping more with that than they are the strategy side.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can even resonate with that because Dream Big & Co. has an agency side, even though we have aspirations of being a media company. But I would love for you to talk about Brand Street and just inform the people listening on what exactly it is and how the initial start to it has gone with the audience and the community that's involved with everything.
Yeah, no problem. So we started Brand Street like a month ago. We have 85 paying members, slowly growing. We're really excited about where we're going with it. For us, Brand Street is just an opportunity to turn my content into paid content, and then allow my partner Chris to also begin expanding on his content that he had planned. I think what's great about going to paid is that you have a more diverse income base than when you have consulting, right? So you don't need that one big client, and then you have to worry if that one big client fires you. That stuff sort of is not as much of a worry. So that's how we think about Brand Street and sort of why we started it from the monetization point of view. From the product point of view, the reason that we started Brand Street was this was a problem that my partner had when he worked in his job. He didn't have any organizations that he could rely on for helping him with like earned and owned media. So, when he would work he was the chief of staff at the Ohio Treasurer's office, he would not be able to like find many other like-minded professionals who he could talk about with these types of problems. So with that in mind, we realized that Brand Street was this opportunity to connect those types of folks. And now that we're doing that, we're building out a group of people who are in communications or, are in marketing. And there's so much focus on like paid acquisition. We want it to be that group that could focus on that earned and owned media component.
Yeah, I didn't know it came from a spot of being a problem for your co-founder. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think that's like a big thing that a lot of people need to realize when they start these communities is like are you creating content that you yourself like have these problems with, that are content issues that are like you struggle with? Because that allows you to, in my opinion, just create better content. Because when you do it, you're like, well, am I having this problem? Like, is this an issue that I'm facing? And sort of thinking about it that way.
Gotcha. So you would advise to always have people start there of like, where do I need to scratch my own itch? Because I know when you interviewed Danny Miranda, like he even talked about, and I know a lot of people who have solo podcasts say like, I'm doing this because I need to ask questions that I had problems with, or I want to learn from people I really admire. So kind of being the proxy between what you build and what internal problems you have.
So, yeah, I think Danny did a good job of, he talked about in his stuff, like why he creates content. One of the things that I liked about him is like he has all this energy and love, he would say, and like it was like an outpouring of that. But yeah, he also, I think, shared that same thought of he wouldn't create content that he himself wouldn't consume. I think that's just a really easy benchmark. Because the thing is, if you want to create content for a long time, and he said this too, how do you create content for something that like you yourself are not interested in? Then you're just not going to have motivation at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's with writing too. Like I know Julian Shapiro even, like he talks about being the person who you're writing it for yourself and then you publish for others, and obviously doing it from that place. But I wanted to ask you, along with what I said before, with working with so many people and seeing like or explaining the process you go through, what are commonalities in like a kind of bullet formed way of the great creators you see, and like things they do really well to grow their brand and establish trust with people that like flock to them?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably like not a great answer, but like is the best answer in my opinion. Or I should say it's not like an insightful answer, but it's the best answer, in that it's just published consistently. So many people, like, they don't publish frequently enough, and then people just forget about them. And I think Pomp's a great example, and probably like an extreme example, but he publishes so much content, like you can't forget about the guy. And his wife is the same, but I think it's so much about just be active every day, get yourself out there, and your audience will grow.
Yeah, and then from a place of like personal productivity, like how do you produce so much content? Like what do you go through every day in order to schedule stuff out, research stuff, and do it? Because I see you're constantly doing it yourself, and that'll contribute to the growth of whatever comes.
Yeah, for me, I just literally have a Google Doc, and I say this is what I have to do today, and I just do it. Actually, that's it. Like, there's no
Got it.
On other secret things. I need to get a bit better at being more consistent with my content. I still don't think I'm like great at it, but I'm getting there. So I'd love to definitely have some more consistency on that side of things.
Yeah. And I know you've been on TikTok as well and doing those stories. I made a video myself, and it was on Fred Rogers, and it did extremely well. So I've been saying to myself, I'm just going to put all my focus into that and just TikTok. Like Twitter, I post here and there, but like TikTok has such nascent potential. Are you focusing on that more? Because I know it's you're big on Twitter, but
yeah. So TikTok is something that I want to focus on more, and I haven't been. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I like have a good niche. I just need to spend time dedicated to like building content there, and I'm just not doing it, and I need to do better at it.
Gotcha. That's it. I love the humility in that too. I agree. Like, how do you balance though, like being like having a high standard for yourself, but not being too hard on yourself? Because I try to do the same, but I can't. Sometimes I might be too judgmental in that I'm not doing enough, but it might just be that I literally don't have the financial bandwidth or the actual bandwidth to get stuff done.
Yeah, I think it's just I have deadlines, and I get the content out there, and like that's it. And it's so automated for me at this point. Like, what is A+ content, what's B+ and C+, And like, for example, I wrote an article today and it was good, but it was not like my best article ever. But like, I know that I'm not going to write like D content. I've gotten good enough at this point. So I think for everyone, I just encourage them to start writing, and you start figuring out like what's good content, what's bad content, or do YouTube, create videos, do TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Just start putting out the content, and then you'll start like noticing the difference between A+ content, B+ content, and C+ content.
I love that. I really love that. It's just plain and simple like that. And I wanted to leave room for you to speak on where you're aspiring to go, because I always like to ask a bigger dream someone has, or the individual they aspire to be, because this is Dream Big Daily. Dream Big & Co. focuses on the story, but it's like, where do you aspire to be, and how can we best serve you and supporting you? So like, where do you want to go with Branch Street, and like, where do you hope to be with Ari Lewis's Twitter and
yeah,
stuff
so for us, we have like 80, right? I think it's at 85 members of Branch Street. I'd love to get to 500 by the end of the year. And then in terms of where I'm going with my content, it's just a day at a time. Luckily, right, making money from consulting, other things. So, as long as like my financial position is stable, which it is, then I don't have to worry about a bunch of stuff. I think it just takes a long time with content. So I know that I'm hitting a niche. People are interested in my work. People like it. So now it's just continuing to grow that out and build it. And I know if I add quality and I have good information, people will pay me either for Branch Street or I'll monetize in other ways.
And what's one big learning you had in the past year as well? Like something that, a big realization that you didn't have before, as I know the past year definitely humbled most, but that you want to apply going forward, a sort of like change from before and after, like Ari before, Ari after, and how you're implementing that lesson. Yeah,
again, and this is such cliche advice, is just stay focused. I definitely have a tendency to get distracted, so staying focused is just so important, and I think
likewise.
Something that, it's just most people need to do it and stick with it.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I do appreciate that. I appreciate everything you did say here as well, and I do drive people to follow you on Twitter, to follow you on TikTok even, and look at what you're doing at Branch Street. You're always putting out valuable stuff. Like every time I see your tweets, it's always something I dive into. So I do appreciate that, and I do appreciate how much you're focused on, let me just do the best I possibly can, because from there everything ripples outwards. But man, it's something for people to learn from as well.
Yeah, and for those who are interested in they're listening and want to join Branch Street, they can use the code Lewis. It's LEWIS, and they get 20% off for joining.
That's a deal. Do it. But I do appreciate it, man. Have the best week ahead, and continue to crush it. You're doing great, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it.
You got it.